Welcome to the Brainiate Show, where we talk about all things Salesforce, sharing the coolest features, solutions, and best practices to turn you into a Salesforce rockstar. Here's your host, former attorney turned Salesforce consultant, trainer, and MVP, David Giller.
In this episode, I sit down for a chat with Misty Jones. Misty is a senior Salesforce administrator at Mutual of Omaha Bank, based out of Scottsdale, Arizona. Misty has earned 6 Salesforce certifications, 3 certifications in 1 week at Destination Success 2017. Within the next half hour, you will hear Misty share her experience at Destination Success 2017, the prep work she did prior to attending, the intense experience during Destination Success, and the accomplishments she came away with as a result of her hard work. Misty explains how she initially got introduced to Salesforce, reveals how she handles end-user training, duplicate management, and some best practices around leveraging Salesforce reports and dashboards to drive success within the organization. Misty Jones, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Thank you. Doing well. Great to be here.
I am honored to have you on the podcast. You are all over on social media, especially with regard to some funny and insightful tips with regard to the Salesforce platform. And in particular, you recently attended Destination Success, and your posts during Destination Success completely amazed me. I was floored. 3 certifications in 1 week. I want to hear about that. How on earth did that happen?
Well, I decided that I was going to take the consultant track at Destination Success this year. Probably a good thing for me is I actually attended last year's Destination Success, which was the first one. But it's not like the 3 certifications just came to me in 1 week. It's not like I just went to Destination Success. There was a lot of prep work going into that ahead of time. So what you didn't see probably in my post is all the trailhead I did, all the reading, Googling documentation, all the pre-work. So I would say there was at least 6 or 8 weeks of prep up into before actually attending and actually sitting for any of those exams.
So is that the case where most people, so for those who don't know about Destination Success, let's sort of back it up a little bit, and it's my own fault that I just dived right into it. Let's share with people who are not familiar with Destination Success what it's about, and then I want to dive into, is it normal to do, is it typical to do all of that pre-work, or whether or not that was just you. So first, if you could describe what is Destination Success that we just jumped in on.
Basically, Destination Success to me is maybe one of the coolest Salesforce events that they've put out recently. I mean, I really like the smaller, almost kind of regional feel of this event. So what it is you go there for the week and you basically eat, sleep, and live Salesforce. And this year they had 9 different tracks that you could be a part of. And again, I was part of the consultant track. But they have everything from admin to developer to the CTA track, the Certified Technical Architect. So you can choose what you want to be a part of, but you just really immerse yourself in studying and learning about that specific track from about, I'd say, 8:30 in the morning till 6:30 in the evening.
Wow.
You grab a quick bite to eat, and then you go to your room and you study, and you might even take an exam that same day. There were 3 opportunities to get certified. Included in the price of your registration. They're at Destination Success, and my specific track actually ended up having 2 additional opportunities to get certified there. So I actually took an exam every single day, Monday through Friday.
Wow, that is intense. So generally speaking, are people just initially diving into the training aspects when they arrive at Destination Success, or is it common for people to, for attendees, to do the type of pre-work studying that you did for yourself?
I know Salesforce U not only sends out, but strongly encourages the pre-work that they set up for us. They set it up for you, I want to say, about 6 weeks in advance of the event. And it's actually available to us still. It's available 60 days after the event ends. So we could look at other tracks if we wanted to. But a lot of prep is expected before you arrive actually on site. And like I said, it's strongly encouraged to do that type of work ahead of time.
Wow. So you put in weeks worth of work of YouTube, Google, Trailhead before you got there. You arrived, and it's essentially boot camp training, and in the evening, knocking out these certification exams.
Yes, actually, the very first day,
Mm-hmm.
well, I arrived on a Sunday, but Monday morning, you sit for an exam before you've even gone to class yet.
Whoa.
So there were people passing exams Monday morning.
Wow, that's intense. Took a lot of Red Bull, huh?
Yes, but I actually had no Red Bull, but some good night's sleep. But again, like I said, you eat, sleep, and live Salesforce. And I mean, you go there with the idea that that is what you're going to do. So I don't know. I'm setting goals right now for myself for Destination Success for 2018 that's going to be held in DC.
Right.
It's not something that you would go, like you wouldn't just say, okay, I'm going to go to Destination Success this year, and I'm just going to pop up on site and take tests and pass them. I mean, that might happen for you. It wouldn't have been that way for me. It's something that I've been immersed in. I've had hands-on training. I've, like I said, done all the pre-work. I've Googled. I've gotten in my developer org and tried things and broken things.
Right.
Trying to figure out how they work and really learning all the intricacies of how something works. I mean, territory management, like the two different types of forecasting, just the stuff I'd never seen or really touched that much before. I just really had to get in the trenches and get dirty with those features.
Wow. That is incredibly impressive, even with all of the pre-work. Just to have that determination and the stamina and the level of planning, focus that's necessary to accomplish all of that, I give you tremendous credit. I know for myself, I personally am such a nervous test taker. I get anxious, not only with certification, with Salesforce certification exams, even with the maintenance exams. It's really with practically any exam I've taken. And I'm an attorney. I've taken the bar exams for multiple jurisdictions and passed the first time. I get so unbelievably nervous before, during, and after exams that it just, the idea of it just is mind-boggling to me, to be able to just crush that many certifications in such a short amount of time. That's absolutely awesome. That's really impressive.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, here we are, we're seeing how you've recently just nailed all these certifications, just banging them out, basically like, whoa, I'm done, like a machine. How did you first get introduced to Salesforce, and what was that experience like to sort of demonstrate the progression of when you first got introduced, and what is this thing called Salesforce? Is it one word or two? To going to Destination Success and churning out these certifications?
Well, I do have to say, it's been a long road. I was first introduced to Salesforce back in 2011 in the job that I actually have right now. I was potentially going to be in a sales role, as I'd always been in my career up until now, up until when I actually came into this firm. But I'd always been a financial advisor. I have my licenses. I had my CFP, and I'd always been in a client-facing role. And 2009 was just really, really hard. The stock market was really low.
Yeah.
And the partner and I that I had at the time, she and I split up. Won't go into details there, but we did split up, and I was like, you know what? It's okay. I can continue building my book of business myself. I can do this. And it's not that I couldn't. It was just, man, it was a 24/7 job, and I don't know. It just really wore me out. It was just too much for me and overwhelming. So the boss that I have now was like, well, if you don't want to be in sales, is there anything else you're interested in? Is there anything you want to do? I was like, I don't know. I would love to help everyone else sell and market and track their pipeline and, make sure things don't fall through the cracks. And how can we get a 360 view of our clients? And he's like, how about this? Do you know anything about Salesforce? Because somebody else we still had it, and we had brought it from our prior firm because we were purchased by Mutual of Omaha Insurance. But it was like, okay, this thing that we have is just kind of sitting there, and the only thing we're using it for is name, address, phone number. That was it.
Wow.
So nobody had really done anything with it for maybe, I'd say, a year and a half, 2 years, and like really growing it anyway. And so they said, do you want to do this? And I was like, well, for me, not having a sales quota sounds really awesome. So maybe 3 weeks later, I was in Orange County, and I was sitting in the Admin 201 class.
Whoa.
Again, hadn't even touched Salesforce, except typing in names and addresses.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, if you're going to do it, you're going to go all in. So I did, and that's where it really started. And then I got certified with the Salesforce as a certified Salesforce administrator about 3 months later, and it's just gone from there. So that's how I initially got in. It was just completely an accident. The thing that I really love about Salesforce, especially now, and even when I first got started, is it was something that I didn't have to go to school and learn how to code. And I don't have a background in technology or IT at all. I mean, I'm going from sales and finance, and it was something that I could still learn and build and customize and help our sales force with Salesforce.
Right.
So I've really turned it into a career for me, just a completely different career path, still within the same firm.
So tell me what it must have been. I can't imagine what it must have been like going ahead and learning the intricacies of Salesforce from an admin perspective, taking the Admin 201 course, knowing that within the organization, they're only using it as the most basic Rolodex of capturing names, addresses, phone numbers. How did you work with that? Because you must have felt that there's both tremendous opportunity and a very a limited, focused, narrow mindset on what Salesforce is all about. And by the way, I often tell people, I see this often, and I often tell people, it's sort of like you have a Tesla in the driveway and you're only using the trunk.
That's a very good analogy because that's exactly what we were doing. The fun of all this has been for me just finding all the cool and fun things that Salesforce can do. Because when I first got it, I didn't realize it was anything more than seriously like a CRM. I didn't know you could do all these amazing things with it, and my mind was just completely blown when I was in this class. I was like, what? Even things like your role hierarchy doesn't have to match your org chart.
That's right.
Mind blown. As far as like visibility into records, I was like, oh my gosh, this changes everything. Like ours was completely, like there's so much that I could do to it that I thought would help improve, and people could collaborate on deals, that type of thing. And just each time I've been able to make something cool, I get so excited to, show my manager or to show upper management. I'm like, look at this. I mean, something like our timesheet, it's now in Salesforce, but it just saves all of the emailing around and, so much just manual work. It's just automated. Even something like an approval process. We have our timesheet in there, and then it automatically goes to your manager, and they approve it. Same with your time off request. You can put it in there, and it's really easy to get it approved. Again, without all the email traffic around and around.
The emails, sometimes it's paper, sometimes it's attachments of PDFs, and sometimes it's Excel spreadsheets, and sometimes it's all of the above.
I just love all the stuff you can automate, and it never gets old to me when anybody says, oh my gosh, that's amazing. You're a genius. I never tell them, oh, hey, I'm totally not a genius. Harnessing the power of this tool.
Yeah.
But it never gets old being told those types of things.
Right.
When I get little wins like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know what it's like. I see it often. Just earlier today, I was having a conversation with a client of mine, and I pointed out, I said, do you realize how every time we're in a meeting with a senior executive and the senior executive starts talking about their requirements from a reporting perspective, and you don't really see me taking a whole lot of notes when they talk about what they need from reporting. You know why? Because Salesforce gives everything that they're talking about, Salesforce gives us out of the box. We don't have to do anything in order to get those features with regard to reporting, to be able to slice and dice data based on my accounts or my contacts or my deals or my open tasks or the deals that have happened in the last quarter, the last month, the last year, the last week, the last day. We could do that out of the box. We could do it on the fly. It's not a big deal. And they're like, really? That's why you don't take notes?
I never tell the others here
Mm-hmm.
that it's me. I never tell them. It's my secret.
Right.
You're blowing my cover.
I'm sorry. It takes a lot of time. Let me think about it. I'll get back to you. Give me about 3 months. Right?
Exactly. Well, it takes me, 30 minutes.
Right. All good. Okay, so let me ask you a couple of questions with regard to specific topics that are really common within the Salesforce platform. So the first one relates to end user training. So tell us a little bit about your experiences as it relates to managing the training of end users, particularly within a larger organization.
I've made a lot of mistakes
Mm-hmm.
in the 6 years that I've been working with Salesforce, so I can
Mm-hmm.
probably tell you all the things not to do.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of focusing on that, I'm going to say, here's what I ultimately ended up learning that has worked for me. The thing that I figured out about the user training is I've tried to do it like based on role within our organization,
Right.
and I've tried to kind of do a team approach versus having people just one-on-one. I have done that, but I feel like the teams, like if this is a sales team for this line of business, that's who I'm having all in a training together. Other things that I'm doing is I'm trying to teach people versus, okay, here's a lead. Here's how to convert a lead.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what the lead turns into, and now your lead disappears. Instead of doing that, instead of like, I don't know, like what the screens are, I'm not really focusing on that. I'm focusing more on when to do that.
Right.
When should we be entering a lead? When is it that we would want to convert that lead to a viable sales opportunity? What's our terminology around those things? What are our definitions?
Mm-hmm.
And again, like I said, doing that as a team. Let me think what else. Another thing is I made mistakes. I was always like, it's really cool that I can just upload some sample data in a sandbox and I can refresh that when I need to, and we can just use this same training data over and over.
Right.
And I felt like people weren't retaining that information,
Mm-hmm.
even though I'd go back to them, months later and talk about, well, remember when we did X, Y, and Z in the training, and they weren't retaining it. I was like, what I ended up doing and changing is I'm using their real data. I'm like, bring your own business cards or your leads or your real life stuff that we need to get into Salesforce, and let's do that together.
Right.
And it's like the information is sticking so much better in their heads, and I'm getting way better user adoption
Mm-hmm.
and getting better quality of data into the Salesforce. And we're actually being able to enforce that. If it's not in Salesforce, it doesn't exist, because so
Right.
much more is actually getting in there now.
Yeah. And I think what you're also calling out, which a lot of people don't do, so I give you kudos for structuring it this way, where it sounds to me like the training, you are presenting the training to the groups of users within the organization in the appropriate contextual format. A, by defining the audience, the group that is in any particular session is a homogeneous crowd, so they're within the same group or subgroup, the same team, so they have similar functional roles within the organization. And even when you're getting to a particular screen, a button, a field, you're not saying, click on the edit button, now the screen refreshes, now make your change and hit save. You're explaining why and when you would hit the edit button, or you're walking them through. I have a correction to the person's last name, the spelling of the customer's last name. Now is where, what do? I hit the edit button, and now I can make the change.
Yeah, exactly. Why you would do certain things.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I've noticed, and just like as we were talking about destination success,
Yep.
me going out and doing these trainings with the people,
Mm-hmm.
in person, I mean, it would save money to do these things in our different market areas by me just doing a webinar
Right.
that type of thing. I found that there's just with Destination Success, I can get a lot out of, the hands-on training, the trailheads, the videos.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I just don't feel that there's really any replacement for hands-on, in-person, live training.
Right. That's absolutely true. There is a lot to be said for the in-person classroom style training. I tell people often that nothing can replace, even for the instructor, nothing can replace the facial expressions. Because if I'm at the front of the room and I'm doing training, and to see that people either they completely get it, they are bored to tears, they're rolling their eyes at me, I need to know to pick up the pace and move on. On the flip side, if I get deer in the headlights look, I could be explaining the simplest feature of Salesforce, and I get the deer in the headlights look, I realize right away before anyone says anything, I need to pause, I need to explain, or I need to ask people what's confusing about what I just said. Tell me a little bit about some issues that you might have had with regard to duplicate management and how you handle duplicate management within the organization.
Also, I can't tell you, seriously, I feel like I keep repeating myself regarding how many mistakes I've made along my career.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a solo admin, so I don't have anybody else within my firm to go to and keep me out of trouble. So I'm kind of muddling through things. But the coolest thing that I found that I'm really loving right now is back in 2012, my first Dreamforce. I went to this presentation. It was on data.com. And I was like, what is this? This
Mm-hmm.
clean my data. And that's before Salesforce purchased it. It was actually part of Salesforce.
Mm-hmm.
I was just, I don't know, again, mind blown, like how cool this product was. And I've come to finally figure out, and this is more recent actually, and I picked this up in one of my training classes, or I guess coming up to Destination Success, but there's a data.com duplicate management feature. And why I've never found this, I couldn't tell you, but it's right there on the setup menu. And that's what I'm really loving right now, that there's already, I don't know why I didn't know this, but
Mm-hmm.
there's already matching rules in there, standard matching rules
Mm-hmm.
that you can use before you even have to make your own. I mean, the duplicate
Incredible.
ones, the duplicate rules, like what to actually do when you have similar
Right.
records, you have to make that, but the matching rules are already there. And so I was like, maybe I should just activate these. And I was just amazed at like all the things. I made a couple duplicate rules, so it would like it just notify me, hey, these
Mm-hmm.
people went ahead and bypassed this, and here's something you might have to merge or do something with. I just can't even tell you how much information I've received in probably the past 2 months on this feature, and it's allowing me to make other rules so the bad data doesn't even get in there in the first place now. And I'm kind of learning, what kind of limits that I can make. That way people can still do their job and not just keep hitting, they just can't ever save a record and they just
Right.
keep getting errors.
Right.
But I'm looking for that balance right now.
So that actually raises an excellent question. So the way that you typically have it set up, what is the experience of the typical business user who is creating a record that happens to be a duplicate? So could you walk us through what their experience is like with the configuration that you have right now as it relates to duplicate management?
Well, the biggest win for us, I would say, using this tool is now that I've created, so we can actually see the other records, because before they couldn't see them and they didn't know they were creating duplicates. Now we're finding out, the person in wealth management that is, tracking this person as a prospect, did you know that the commercial lender upstairs already has a relationship with this client? So now we don't look silly going back out to this prospect,
Right.
and we don't know that they've already got business within our firm. And as a large organization, a lot of times we don't know.
Right.
And now we're being able to find out, and we can see, this person already has X dollars with us, or this loan with us, or their checking account, or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's helping us get a lot better view of our client. We're finding people already are existing clients, or other people that have already reached out to that same prospect.
Definitely. And it's tremendously helpful, even if it's not necessarily a barrier to working with someone. It could be just, usually it's the opposite. of being a barrier where it's another entry point where suppose I'm a sales rep, and whether someone fills out a web form, I meet them at a trade show, I then go into Salesforce to enter that person, I see that they're already there. I see that they might have had a deal that they've worked on with someone else within the team. It might be for another sister part of the organization where there's now a cross-selling opportunity that nobody was aware of before. Or it's a dormant customer that we can now revive the relationship. So it's not necessarily a problem that I can't work with this person, just the opposite. We have more enriched data regarding this person that we're sort of considering a new prospect, even though they are really an existing customer.
Well, I totally agree with you. That's exactly what we found. We found ways to increase our wallet share with our existing clients. And we find, if a person were to leave the firm, say the wealth management advisor were to leave the firm, the client is less likely to leave the firm because they've also got a relationship. Maybe their mortgage is with the private banker, and maybe they have something with their business with our commercial lender, or their checking accounts with our retail branch. So we're finding a lot of that and retaining our existing business versus having to spend so much time on new business acquisition.
Right.
Not that we're not doing that too. It's just really great to not have to hunt as hard for, to keep our business.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. So tell me a little bit about, as it relates to leveraging reports and dashboards. We touched on reports and dashboards somewhat before in the conversation. So can you share some best practices with regard to reports and dashboards from your experience in terms of rolling it out to the organization?
My main thing has been to talk to the executives within my firm and find out what's really, the things that they care about. What are their KPIs? And by that, I mean key performance indicators. For anybody that's not familiar with KPI, the first time I heard it, I didn't know what that meant. But basically, what is it that keeps my boss up at night? Or what is it that the director of wealth management, what bothers him? What is it that he needs to know about? And that's how I'm creating my reports and dashboards, is around those metrics. Because the very first time that I really figured out how to make dashboards and pretty pictures, I was making all these things. I was like, they totally want to know about all this stuff. And really all I was doing is making really cool pictures that I thought were important.
Right.
And they're not really as important. They were like, that's okay, and that's cool. And there was some of that there. But it's, they were like, well, I really want to know not just about our referrals. I want to know where they're coming from, broken down, whether they're coming from internal or external sources, those types of things. Just adding a little more detail to them and granularity was just a lot better. So I guess the main thing was just finding out what they wanted versus what I thought they needed.
Right.
So obviously just capturing the right data there and building the reports and dashboard off of that. And then also, I'm trying to build into some gamification into our reports and dashboards. Some of the things that I'm putting out there is we're trying to get people more engaged, because if you see, this person has this many deals won, or this dollar value of something, or this many, there's contests around referrals to other areas of the bank. Some of those types of things, you never want to be on the bottom of the list. So there's some games around that. So we're actually increasing the amount of referrals we're getting. We're even increasing the quality of the referrals. And then we've even built a referral program. So there's a little bit of a sift around certain types of referrals that we're getting in.
Right. Have you experienced or tried leveraging reports and dashboards within a specific work area by putting it on a large screen? So like the dashboards, let's say deal closure rate, and it's grouped by ranking of whether it's the top or the lowest performers within the organization or within the team, and having the dashboard on the screen sort of having the wall of fame or wall of shame, or a little bit of both, right there for everyone to see. Have you played around with that at all?
A little bit. it's more for the referrals. Again, we've
Mm-hmm.
done that within our branches. They're seeing basically like a hall of fame.
Right.
Here's how many referrals, not only of you sending referrals, but is that resulting in actual booked business, not just throwing anything against the wall and seeing if it sticks. Like we're showing the actual results there. We also use the ever popular login wall of shame. That one's a
Yes.
popular one that we still show because ideally that thing is blank.
Tell me a little bit about to what extent you've seen best practices with regard to giving end users the ability or teaching them how to create their own reports and dashboards. Because I've seen responses to this being a little bit all over the place, where personally my take on it is, why not empower all users, teach them how they can take any report and create their own personal copy and modify it however they see fit, however they need. But I've also seen in many organizations where it's completely locked down, and end users typically cannot create their own reports and dashboards whatsoever. They need to request them, and another team will build those reports and dashboards on their behalf.
It has actually saved me a ton of time by allowing our end users to create their own reports and dashboards, because I'm sure that like
Mm-hmm.
reporting and dashboards is one thing. Those are things that you can do that don't have to be in a sandbox. You really can't break anything
That's
by
right.
making a report. I mean, you might end up with a report that's got all sorts of crazy fields on it that's not that useful, but you can't break it because you can always go back, customize it, and and make it better.
Right.
So it's actually, like I said, it saved me a lot of time. We have specific people especially in other locations other than where I'm located here in Scottsdale.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's actually a private banker in Omaha versus him emailing me and telling me all about all the things that he wants. He could simply get on there and be like, here's where I am so far. And he's actually really, really far, but
Right.
there's just a little bit of help he needs, so we can get on a little meeting online
Right.
and I can share his screen and I can go, oh, here's what you want right there. And we're good, we're done, versus me having to do the entire thing. So I think it's another way of getting our users even more engaged with their sales.
I think most of the organizations that lock down the reporting functionality, they simply don't realize that no matter what report any user clicks on, they will only see data that they have permission to see anywhere in Salesforce. And by empowering users to create their own reports, it makes it super easy for them. It also gives them the flexibility to slice and dice data however they want without bogging down, whether it's a Salesforce admin or people in IT, whoever it is that would be otherwise creating these reports on their behalf.
So like how once they've got the report that they think that they want, just that export details feature, some people that I've dealt with, they're really, really good at Excel. Maybe not as good as they want to be in
Right.
Salesforce. So they kick it out to Excel. They're like, man, I can make pivot tables, and they're really strong with the Excel
Mm-hmm.
skills. So again, you're able to take your Salesforce data, put it out into a format that's a little more user friendly for you personally, and then you're still able to slice and dice and make charts or whatever it is you want to do in a format that's more comfortable for you. So I like the fact that you can kick the details out.
Absolutely.
Again, still not something that I have to be involved in as an admin.
Big time. Totally with you. Tell me about user groups, your personal experience with user groups. To what extent have you been involved with user groups, whether it's virtually or in person?
The user group that I'm most involved with here in our area
Mm-hmm.
is the Women in Tech.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I feel like I relate most to. One, I'm a woman.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sort of, I mean, I am in tech, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love to share with people, how it is that I got into Salesforce. Again, no technical background, and kind of I'm one of those stories that, hey, you know what? If I can do it, you can do this. As far as being a new user, or I don't know, I guess just anything. So that's the one that I'm most passionate about and interested in. And we do fun things like go to wine bars and we have our meetings there, and we go hiking, and just recently we had a movie night. So again, that's the one I'm the most passionate about, and they've approached me about potentially becoming a co-leader of that group.
Hmm.
So I can't say yes to all the things, but that's one thing I think that I might be saying yes to.
I will tell you that being a user group leader is, yes, it's work. It is the equivalent of taking on another part-time job, um, but it is incredibly rewarding, and typically it is a lot of fun. So it is worth it. It all depends on everything.
I've just found in my own experience with our group is that me helping other people has just actually ended up helping me
Yes.
even more.
Yes.
And as I teach somebody and sit down with somebody to go over something or their use case, I'm actually learning a lot more helping them learn. So,
Mm-hmm.
even if a little bit of selfish reason, I'm also benefiting from doing this,
Right.
which I think is great. So we both win.
Yeah. Absolutely. Got a couple. I have a quick question for you with regard to Dreamforce. At Dreamforce 2016, you presented. Tell us a little bit about how that happened. Not everyone gets to present at Dreamforce.
Well, my friend Monica Sandberg is actually the one that she approached me saying, you know
Mm-hmm.
what, this is our fifth Dreamforce. We should really submit something. I'd
Uh-huh.
never even submitted before. I was like, they're never going to pick me. She's like, fine, I'll write it. And maybe they'll pick me, meaning us.
Uh-huh.
And she's a really great writer. She actually used to be a screenwriter before she got into Salesforce.
Wow.
So she had to write the abstract, and it was very like, it was about fashion. It was like, who wants to be unfashionable? You could be fashionable like Benioff shoes. And it was, going from workflows to this nice process builder where you could take multiple workflows, turn it into one fashionable process. Look how simple and clean and wonderful this is. All clicks, no code. That was basically the abstract.
Mm-hmm.
And it got picked. And we were like, oh, now we got to write this thing. And thank goodness, again, she's a writer. I guess there's a writer in all of us.
Mm-hmm.
I feel, and I know actually, that she's just a much better writer than I am. So she wrote the script, and it was a lot of work. It's, again, for me, it's just not something that is natural for me, public speaking.
Right.
So we practiced, and we wrote, and we redid the slides, and we had weekly meetings on the phone with Holly Palmer and Mike Gerhold and some others. And it took probably, I would say, maybe 8+ weeks of multiple iterations of this, and finally getting down to presenting in the admin theater for 20 minutes. And it's a lot of work for 20 minutes, but it was so worth it. I was like, when we were done, I was like, oh my gosh, we just presented at Dreamforce. We're superstars. It was just like, let's put on the admin cape and run around because this is amazing. And so I did. I put on my little green admin meadow vest.
Yeah.
Put my hat back on. I got my megaphone out, and we're, chanting that we're awesome admins, and kind of a little overboard, but hey, whatever. It was amazing.
Well, being someone that was in the audience while you presented, you did a spectacular job. You were great, and it did not look like you were nervous at all. You completely crushed it.
Well, I appreciate that, but wasn't without a whole lot of preparation
Right.
and a lot of work into there.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. It takes work to pull off something that's that's impressive, and it's a unique experience. Not everyone gets to do that, and in order to be unique, you have to do some unique things.
Well, we're going to submit again for similar types of sessions, and I think that we're going to kind of go with the bantering back and forth as kind of our brand, our thing that we do, because I think it's fun to kind of be a little more interactive.
Right.
And it seems like the session was well taken, and we had some good questions at the end. So again, we're going to give it a go, and fingers crossed, maybe we'll get selected again.
Good for you. Well, I look forward to being in the audience once again next time. I'm not even going to say if, I'm saying when you present at the next Salesforce event, and hopefully it'll be the big stage at Dreamforce.
Like I said, fingers crossed.
Great.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, Misty, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Brainy Show. I appreciate it. My listeners appreciate it. I have no doubt that my listeners will gain from the knowledge and the insight and advice that you've shared. And I look forward to having you again on the podcast in the not too distant future.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Brainiate Show. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to any resources referenced in this podcast. Also, don't forget to head over to Brainiate.com to subscribe to the Brainiate blog, where I regularly share Salesforce-related tips and tricks to help you become a Salesforce rockstar.